when we build community. Like you have to do it one by one. Like that's how entire movements are created. Um, Communities don't start with like 3,000 people. Like they start with like me and my other two friends who apparently also like web design and starting a student club and like just talking about it. Right, it all starts there.
Hello and welcome to the Design Explorers, a podcast by the Agoda design team. Agoda.com is a global digital travel platform where you can book hotels, vacation rentals, flights, and airport transfer. In this podcast, we will be sharing the awesome work of our design team, discuss interesting trends in relation to design and travel, and talk about product design in general. My name is Nachum Yamin and I will be your host for the show.
Is that a Google shirt?
Oh yeah, it's a Google shirt. Like I'm a big fanboy of Google. When I was a student, my ultimate dream was to work at the Fang or whatever they're called now, like Gamma.
Is that a new name?
But things have changed, and I've decided like I want something else.
Was that from like a Google event, or how did you get that?
As far as I know, it was actually from Google itself. Like, before I went to this program or fellowship called Stanford ACES Summit. So I was selected as one of the participants, and then you get to experience Silicon Valley, what it feels like to like pitch to investors, meet some like-minded people who want to go into the startup space. And interestingly, I did actually end up like building my own startup. And
you get a cool shirt.
And I got a cool shirt at the Google HQ. But
how did you actually get involved in this Stanford ASICS program?
It's called the Stanford Asia Pacific Student Entrepreneurship Summit. Oh no, it's not the last SS Society, but there's a summit after that. A local chapter here in Manila where there are people who have went through that program. And interestingly, it's actually super cool because the alumni that I know that went through that thing are almost always entrepreneurial, and they start their own startups and stuff. And they are also more likely to be product people, like people who had their own UX research studios, or like become product designers at big banks, or like people like me who's totally random, like does design and then does a startup. They're like, yeah, so it's pretty cool. So like the local chapter gives us the info, and I've met some of my mentors there. And actually, it's related to community because that's the ACES community, right? And I've been a part of that. And then I was also similarly inspired by a friend who started or headed the local chapter, because I was like, hey, this guy is like same age as me, and he's like doing all of this cool stuff. So like, why can't I do that too? And that was the time when I was like, what am I passionate about? Like, what am I actually super into? And I guess it was UX. So I was like, okay, I'll start a club, like a student club.
Today we have Alexis to talk about communities and share his own stories about how he's always been involved right from the beginning, as he's transitioned into UX and currently entrepreneur, working on his own startup as a co-founder. So Yeah, please welcome Alexis. And Alexis, could you tell a little bit more about yourself? Like, how did you get here today?
Sure. So, hey everyone, I'm Alexis, former Agoda design intern. And right now, I am a co founder and chief design officer of a startup called Swarm. And it's basically a community of founders and product builders, and where we turn those ideas into actual working MVPs. So, how did I end up here? So I think it's been 5 or 6 years since my internship at Agoda, but um, I've been in design for the longest time, as far as I can remember. Because like when I was in grade school or like even like kinder, I like Microsoft PowerPoint and like fiddling with
Wow.
the.
Not a lot of people can agree with you on
Yeah,
that.
I love Microsoft PowerPoint. I love the transitions. I know what dissolve means. Like, uh, I used to do like cool Looney Tunes animations on that software in like kindergarten, like, and I show it off to my classmates. um, in grade school, uh, at that time, Friendster was the Facebook. So, and if you were, like Yuki, you were probably born that time. Not sure, but
No, I've never used Friendster.
Oh, it's so sad. I'm sure. I'm sure now.
I don't know which part is more sad, that Yuki doesn't know about it, or I remember it because I'm old enough.
Yeah. I loved using Friendster, and Friendster's like a social network, and basically it's like Facebook, but you could customize your profile a bit more, and like you can change the CSS, change colors and stuff, and like if you're a normie, right, like you can just change it from yellow to orange or something. But I was too addicted to it, so I was like, hey, I used the CSS to hide all parts of the Friendster profile. Like you can hide all of the boxes and then like leave one specific div or like box on it. And what I did was I created a Wix website, like a no code builder back then in grade school. And then like I embedded that whole website into my Friendster profile. So it was like whenever someone visits my Friendster profile, it's literally it looks like a personal website. So I was that addicted to like design as a young person, and I never knew what UX was, like it's just me being a free spirit, enjoying the being a builder and like creating things and um making a cool profile with cool animations and marquees and stuff like that. I don't even know if like the audience knows what a marquee is, like the moving text. Like I'm sure no one will know that. But yeah, I started from there, and like in high school, I did print related stuff and graphic design, and like I maintained like I built like a WordPress site for our school publication, um, and um, that was like the time. Those were the times when I was just doing it for myself. Like like I don't care about anyone else. Like it's just me enjoying the thing, the hobbies, the act of creation, and like genuine fun. But then I graduated, became an adult. um, and with all of that past experience, I actually used it to land an internship. And luckily, I had a super cool mentor who taught me like UX design. Shout out to Christian San Jose, CSJ. So CSJ taught me like super specific craft related skills when building websites. Like visual hierarchy, contrast, and how to actually code it yourself, like front end markup wise.
When did you get this? When was this when you actually found an opportunity? How did you meet CSJ?
So CSJ put out, actually, this is a funny story because like there was this super cool design agency in the Philippines called Create PH, and they were running ads on Facebook. So it was Facebook era already. um, and they were running an ad for an intern, like a web design intern. And I was like, oh my god, this is perfect for me. Like this is all I've done all my life.
Is
Like,
this while you were in high school or
no,
university?
this was like first year college or something.
Mhm.
And then I saw it, I applied, and no one replied to me. So like,
They ghosted you.
why? And then like through some other like group and program slash network, one of my friends, Aaron Corpus, if you're listening, he like invited me to a UX design internship. That was like in 2013 or something, or 20, I don't know, like don't even know anymore. 2014 maybe. Um at that time, like the only possible reaction is like, what the hell is UX internship? Like, what? Like, what is that? So it was for an ad agency called Jump Digital. And apparently, this is so surprising. The person's agency, Create PH, that company was acquired
Oh.
by the ad agency my friend invited me to. So I guess it was fate, like, the higher beings up there wanted me to like
Okay.
have CSG as my mentor. And like I took advantage of that. Um, he taught me. So the Create guy, CSJ, his company was acquired by Jump Digital. And then apparently he was gonna be my boss. So like, okay. All worked out in the end. But it's so funny because like during my first day, CSJ was like, "Oh, you're not the type of intern I'm looking for." I was like, "Oh my god, I'm so heartbroken." And
my
I took that as like a challenge. I was like, "Okay, that's what you're saying now, but let's see."
Why was he saying that? Did he mention?
Because like majority of like my skills was like CSG is the type of person who does things from scratch. I'm good at putting blocks of things together, like pirating WordPress themes online and like making it look legit. But I have graphic design skills, and that's enough of like a baseline to learn like visual slash UX design and like UI design. And I learned it from that internship. And after that, I was like, whoa, like, I mean, if you compare my experience to my peers, like, it really is a lot, right? And you can say that I was reasonably ahead. So I was like, I didn't have a place to practice all of the things that I've just learned, because when you join university, there are established communities, clubs, organizations you can join, right? Like they all have their interest groups. But like no one knows what UX is. Like what is user experience? I kind of felt out of place. There was I felt like there was no space to contain the passion I had. So I was like, okay, I know people who started their own clubs. Like, why can't I do that myself? So that's when I started UX Society, User Experience Society in Ateneo de Manila University. So it's a student user experience club, and we hosted talks, workshops. From that point on, I made it a point to not stop where I had the technical skills. Not to stop there, but actually figure out what I'm missing. And I think that's where the communities I joined played a big role. So if you think about it this way, in my university, there was no existing community for design or UX. So I started it. But then, if you think about it, my experience isn't enough. So I need to find some other place where they could guide me and like mentor me and like give me the actual legitimate right course of action and the knowledge to like direct this club, right? So I attended as a student events from User Experience Philippines. Shout out to Ellie and everyone there. And Philippine Web Designers Organization. Shout out to Sophia. And I was so addicted to that. Like I think I had school, right? And then at night I would go out to like a different city just to join like the events and like network and meet face to face with the professionals. And I was a student then. Like imagine like a sophomore or freshman networking with professionals. And I felt it was cool, you know, like I was learning so much knowledge. But then I also felt the privilege, you know, like, hey, I also the privilege, some sort of guilt. And I was like, hey, why am I the only student here? Right? Like, so many other people could be benefiting from all this knowledge. Right after the talks, there would be like, you know, dinners out and like you can talk to the professionals. Like imagine being UK, you're a student in Thailand and like you're still in university and like you attend an event by Agoda and like Nahum is speaking there about how to lead product design in your own teams, right? And then you were just a student, but you know you have access to this knowledge. And right after that talk, Nahum invites you to like eat outside. Those were the kinds of experiences that I had consistently, like over the years in my university life. So that gave me, you know, I guess the wisdom, the knowledge, to like just lead my own student club. But then the community was so important, and I felt like back to my statement earlier, like, hey, why am I the only one having access to these things? So that's when I decided that I wanted to share the stories of these Filipino designers. And the easiest way to do that was just like do a podcast. And I'm introverted. Surprise, surprise. I really am not extroverted. Um, and I thrive in the one-on-one conversations and like small group discussion vibes. So I took that and like um used it to my advantage and did like a one-on-one style interview podcast with Filipino designers. And I think those conversations with designers that I met in the community that I think were super good. Like I gave a platform to tell their story. Because like when you listen to someone's story, it's so cool because when I was there live, I would hear about how they started. Like they would be vulnerable about the mistakes that they've been through. They would also share some practical advice about very specific things, right? Like, for example, like building a community, right? You can ask them all of those questions. And you can ask for advice. And you don't even need to like ask for any opportunity. But the fact that you're talking to them signals your commitment to like the craft or like your likability as a person because you're actually interested in them. To me, that activity and my consistency in doing that in the community gave me a lot of internship opportunities, right? Like five.
Wow.
Yeah, and but there was this, like, initially in our intro conversation, like, you noticed my Google shirt. I actually wanted to intern at Google, um, and I applied at the, like, Singapore office at that time and stuff. But I think I qualified for until, like, the design exercise and stuff, but I didn't get in. Um, and I felt like it's hard because although we're talking about community, right? I think specifically in the Southeast Asian region, of course, it will not be as mature and developed as Silicon Valley, because, like, the people there, the Yukis and Alexises of the world, the youth there have amazing, extraordinary experiences in big tech companies, and they would have amazing internships where they could have, the thought leaders as their mentors, the people authoring the books, um, and the people actually building world class tech products, right? Like, in the Philippines, we have zero access to that, right? Um, I think, I guess, my involvement in the community work um, helped me figure that out, right? Like, as a student, like, hey, this is what world class design meant. And because of the opportunities I took strategically and how I involved myself in the community and giving back, I found my way into Agoda. And shout out to my former manager, Lauren and Dinin, for accepting me. I don't think he's there anymore, but um, that was so cool. And to me, it signaled that, hey, even if I'm from here, I don't need to be in Silicon Valley to understand, like, what world class design means. Like, you can create your own opportunities, and if you're strategic enough, you can actually, like, land a role in a big tech company like Agoda, right? And I was so inspired while I was there. Like, I was hyper aware of how absurd the opportunity was and the chances of me getting there. Like, it's close to impossible. Like, imagine, like, a Filipino intern interning at Agoda. Like, how and why? Like, why would you do that? And specifically in tech, right? Like, I had to get a Thai visa and stuff. But while I was at Agoda, I I I did the things that I did in the Philippines. Like, I built relationships with people. I scheduled a lot of one-on-ones. I went out and did the shabu shabu stuff, dinners. It was super cool. Took a lot of photos, played a lot of ping pong, and did not actually do the design work. No, I'm just kidding. Like, they said based on the Google Forms that I did a good job with my design stuff, but um, it
That's
was,
awesome.
yeah, it was super awesome because at Agoda I was surrounded by people who were alumni from big tech companies, right? Like, there were people from Uber, like Frog, I think, and then, like, Amazon, Google, etc., etc. And okay, so this is what it meant. Like, so this is a type of behavior. This is type of design quality expected. Um, this is what it meant to be in a inclusive, diverse design team. And this is what it meant to have, like, a large scale design organization. Because, like, you will never find that in the Philippines ever. Like, zero until now. Like,
Wow.
it will not exist. So I felt extremely privileged with that experience, and I think um, that paved the way for me to have that sort of unique experience, and like just me
Mm.
wanting to like share that um back home. So yeah.
So I actually have a question about, your time at Agoda. I think one of the things that really stood out is, once, if I were in your shoes, once I do get an opportunity to intern at a company, right? I think one of the things that I would really focus on is craft, and really proving that I can do the job, right? But I think one of the things that you went above and beyond, something that I wouldn't even necessarily consider on the first day, is to, schedule a lot of one-on-ones, just have ping pongs, just go to dinners whenever you're available, right? So how did you come about like prioritizing those things, uh, not necessarily above, but also having those things in mind during your internship here?
So to me, I think the craft part is a given. Like you are
Mm.
expected to deliver exceptional product design work or something. But then I've learned early on, because of my experiences as a student, that you actually do need to build relationships with people. Like um because I had a challenging high school life, because like uh I guess people didn't like my attitude or something, or like that's a but more of like I wasn't a kind, I guess, person. But then I over the years, like in college, I became more self-aware, and I decided that I wanted to work on that, right? I wanted to be more invested in and intentional in the relationships I build with people and the bonds I create. And so, to be completely honest with you, learning those principles paved the way for everything I have right now. Like, I wouldn't have the podcast, I wouldn't be hosting conferences, or like I wouldn't have started like a student club if I didn't focus on that. So, you can say like one of my unique personally, I think one of my unique strengths is that I see that as an opportunity, right? So, for example, right, if I didn't build that, or if I didn't have that perspective joining Agoda, I wouldn't be talking to you right now, right? Like, this would be non-existent. Like, eh, and when you talk to people, when you get to know them, and when you care about your work and you ask for advice, um, I think there's some bond that created, and somewhere down the line, you won't know it, but there are opportunities that are created out of that. There are like affordances, possibilities created from actually building genuine, authentic relationships with people. And that's what matters when we build community. Like, you have to do it one by one. Like, that's how entire movements are created. Um, Communities don't start with like 3,000 people. Like, they start with like me and my other two friends who apparently also like web design, and starting a student club and like just talking about it, right? It all starts there, up to like to the point where from that small thing led up and boulders into like different expansions of the student club in different schools, and like deciding to like, hey, we can just also volunteer for like UX Philippines, blah blah blah, and like me learning the dynamics of what community means at a much larger scale. Um, and that also informs how I do my design work. It's actually really interesting. I think as a designer, this isn't super obvious, like if you think about it, but all of that work, uh, talking to people or getting involved in community, it teaches you a lot about how people think and how they behave and how they will interact with other people. And that actually also informs how you do product design work. So
Wow.
it's super interesting. And um,
That is actually interesting what you're saying. Can you maybe give us example? How does it inform product design?
so for example, you are part of a community and you organize events, right? Like something super simple like that. Because you have that kind of experience as a person, when you join a company like Eventbrite, right? Like or Luma, you already know. Like, okay, this is how it works. Like as an event organizer, this is what matters to me. These are the jobs to be done because you've done that kind of community work in the past. You already know that. And that's just one super hyper specific example, but that kind of life experience and the conversations you have with the people you meet in the community informs so many other things. Like for example, I worked at a HR technology company, like a startup for Caliber. It was one of the it's the first Y Combinator startup in the Philippines. And to be honest with you, because I had the experiences in the community and like in my own student club, which is a community evaluating designers who join our club, I have an opinion when it comes to HR technology, when it comes to that domain. Because like I was evaluating designers who would join our UX department, right? Um, for when we work on freelance projects. So involving yourself in the community, talking to as many people as possible, building those relationships, it actually gives you a lot of insights as a
Yeah.
designer. Um, Not just insights, but you can directly observe specific things like how they react to certain things, what are the principles that they believe in, what is their mental model like, and these people in the community are in different industries. They are in different domains. So the more you meet people, the more you actually inform your own product design process. So yeah, community is super cool.
In a way, I guess you are also practicing empathy when you are building those relationships for the community.
Mm,
And later on,
exactly.
able to use that skill of being empathetic when designing products for users.
Hmm. And with that empathy, and I would talk about that with Swarm, right? So because Swarm is sort of like a freelancer marketplace, and I've had different kinds of experiences in the past, right? Like community organizing, perhaps coaching, or talking to like world class Filipino designers from big tech companies, etc., etc. Because I understand those perspectives, I can create a much more holistic product marketplace and have a design opinion, like because I understand the domain in a deeper way. Because Swarm is like a convergence of all of the things I'm actually passionate about. Community, mentoring, um, being valued for the work you do, HR technology. Those it's literally my dream job, and it utilizes all of my skills in synergy, and I actually really do care about the problem we're solving. So when you build relationships with people or engage in experiences that relate to the community, you will gain a lot of those insights, perspectives, and you won't know. To be honest, I would have never known like I would build Swarm, right? Uh, it's just a chance opportunity. But when those opportunities come, you will be ready. Um, it's more of a preparation kind of thing, and this is one of the ways communities can shape or influence your work.
Mm. So let's talk a bit more about Swarm. What is it exactly that you guys are doing, and how does it relate to building communities?
Sure. So Swarm is basically a community of founders and builders. And typically, we at the early stage, we cater to more non-technical founders because if you're a technical founder, you probably won't use Swarm. Um, you may or you may not, but when you're a non-technical founder, you are very passionate about a specific vertical or domain, right? Let's say gaming or esports, right? But what if you are passionate there, but you don't know anything about software engineering or product design or like marketing, etc., right? You can choose from different kinds of places, right? Like you'll probably think, hey, I'll go to freelancer.com. In marketplaces like that, we've noticed that the freelancers compete among themselves, and it's kind of like a race to the bottom, where you're like, hey, I will design your logo for like $10. No, I can do it for 5. It's so bad. Um, and one of the principles we believe in is like people should be valued for the work they do, like the correct amount of value. Um, that's one thing. And then finding people who can work on very complex things, like an MVP for your startup, is so hard. Like you will literally not find it. So it's also very expensive, right? So at Swarm, we foster the community of builders, software engineers, designers, marketers, writers, UX researchers. We foster that community and we give them high value projects that they can work on and collaborate on together. So, um, what's make what makes it different is that it's literally a community model. So we're designing ways for you to know that, okay, this person has already contributed a lot to the community, and that can signal that this person is trustworthy, right, from a founder's perspective. So we're called Swarm, right, and we love bees and stuff. One of the things we're working through right now as of recording is our reputation system, um, where people are incentivized to like contribute, first and foremost, contribute to our forum and like give thoughtful answers to questions like, hey, how do I start out in product design? You can reply something and like praise someone, or like praise replies that are actually quality answers. um at some point we're also thinking about, um we already have this marketplace called Bazaar inside Swarm, and people post high value projects there all the time. People apply there, and you can actually bet or like vet someone who applied. Like, let's say Nahum applies to a project posted by Yuki. Like, hey, help me design like a website for Agoda explorers. 5,000 Thai baht, right, or something. I don't know how much that is, but and then because I'm from the community, I know Nahum, and he applied. I can bet some of our currency called pollen on him. Like I can vouch for Nahum. I am betting my own reputation on him, and like
Wow.
he can do this project. Like that's an additional signal. So it's super community based. Those are the things we're thinking about. And like what I said, right? I was super involved in a ton of communities, like in my life, and I've learned a lot about how people evaluate things, about signals, about how people care about trust and transparency. So that allows people like me to have an opinion on how we do the product design in this domain. So, um, talking about that, so for example, I vouch for Nahum. If he actually completes that project, I earn reputation from that. So, as the person who vouched for him. So, if you think about it, it's kind of like incentive driven, design or something, whatever that's called. But we when we design the product features, we thinking about, hey, what kinds of behaviors are we incentivizing or disincentivizing? So if we introduce like a reputation system, like similar to like kudos on Reddit, right? People will be much more willing to give quality answers to questions on the forum, right? So those are the interesting things that I've been working on at Swarm, and it's all geared towards also creating wealth for everyone involved. Like the founders, like the builders, actually be paid the correct rate, and even at some point, then investors who are willing to invest in sort of projects within Swarm. But this is all like casual conversation. We are still in alpha, and I'll just send the link to you guys if people want to check it out. But yeah,
How big is the community?
right now the alpha is around 1,000 people, so it's still pretty small. But we started from like zero as well. um, and if you think about it, I am actually utilizing the skills I've learned from my student life and like organizing conferences and stuff. So what matters in the community to me are things like consistency and spaces to converge. Like so like having like literally a weekly talk. We call them Swarm Salons. Like every Friday night, if you have no life like us, every 9 p.m. Philippine time, we host like talks and stuff. And like people from the Swarm community literally go on there and like share stuff. And I love this one session from one of our members, Maddie. She hosted like a tarot card reading session. And like it asked about my love life. Like, it was so cool. Like,
Wow.
yeah, it's a bonding experience among people in our community, and like there are regulars there. Like, hey, you attend every week. You're always here. It's so cool to see you again. And it's all virtual, so it's super cool. So my experience in the community, organizing things, building relationships, I can bring it to the company I'm building now, and m- so much so that I can also apply my design skills and things related to empathy. So, for example, we have a lot of founders or freelancers, right? So that means the content that you should be serving should be based around their needs, right? So it may not be tarot card reading. But we have upcoming talks about how to handle your taxes, or like how to start out as a builder, how to position yourself as a freelancer, working on your brand, um, so things like that. And you only will know those things, to be honest, serendipitously through the community. That's why community is so important. Like you go in there not expecting anything, but you get so much from it. Um, that's why my advice, so like young, even like all designers, Just joking. All designers of all ages. Like
Thanks, Alexis.
I didn't say that now. Like you were the one who declared it. So but you're welcome. Like just try it out. You never know what will happen. It's an asymmetrical opportunity. Like community has done so much for my career, and if you just start, like you'll never know the what will happen. But I am 1000% sure that the benefits are tremendous. And just the happiness from interacting with other human beings is also great and like good for your mental health. Um, and it, like what I said earlier as well, learning from your peers and from your juniors, from your seniors in the community will also help inform you to do better design work. So yeah.
As a designer who might be struggling, especially during the pandemic, creating connections virtually is somewhat limited, and access to these opportunities is quite low. In these times, how do you recommend, or is there any advice on how you could continue to be involved in communities? Or if you were still growing up in this age during the pandemic, right? How would you have gone about differently?
I would go about it in a very specific way. Like if I were to do it now. So
Mhm.
I would I should probably have like a long-term goal. Like for example, I want to transition into product design. And so what I would do next is like create a list of people that I think are good at product design and just have those conversations with them, like approach them on wherever they hang out, like I don't know, Tinder or LinkedIn. I'm not sure what people use nowadays, but um, go in there, just start a conversation, schedule a call, and like gradually the knowledge you have of the domain like increases. So that will inform all of your next like interactions. There are also ways that you can supplement that because I think that's the most effective way. The ways you can supplement that is to attend virtual community events. I'm not sure if EX Thailand is still active, um, or like attend like events from global design communities. I'm sure there are a lot out there. There are people, Gen Z people, like organizing Discord stuff. So,
Mhm.
right. So people host AMAs all the time, or like you can interact with people in the community. Um, Specifically though, for me, it helps if you go into it with a bit of more intentionality, right? So although it is cool and it's fine to like just go in there not expecting anything, um it may be more fruitful for you, like what I said, to have a goal, right? And
Mm.
then work your way around that. So let's say my goal is to learn how to do podcasting, right? I would like talk to Nahum because like I know him from Agoda and he has a podcast or something, right? He's the co-host of Agoda Explorers. um, and I would add more people like Nahum to my list and like just talk to them. Like relationship building to me, I think it's about starts with talking, and then to get further involved in the commitment, you have to think about it as some sort of exchange of value. So if you are a person who can also create a space for people like Nahum, right? Like I could invite Nahum theoretically to like a swarm salon and he can talk and of course also Yuki as well. Maybe.
Thank you.
Maybe.
Maybe. Like, I can invite you both, right, to a swarm salon, and that also further deepens our bond. And because of
Mm.
that, let's say if at some point in the future I go to Thailand, it will have it has to happen that all three of us meet and like have shabu shabu or something. Right? Like and like
Yeah.
and how about new stuff, right? At Agoda and at Swarm. So it's sort of a progression, right? The amount of commitment you put into like the relationships and the community. It's almost always like a give and take scenario. So
Mhm.
you just have to keep that in mind because like you can't be a person who just receives all the time. Like you have to provide some sort of value. So that can mean anything. It can be as simple as, let's say I talk to Nahum and ask him about podcasting. I can write a Twitter thread about that, right? And like tag him, or like, I don't know if we want to talk to the boomers, like go on LinkedIn and like tag him there and like talk about, hey, I talked to Nahum, an expert podcaster and person who also actually knows how to use synthesizers. And this is what I learned. That's already super valuable to like Nahum, right? And his personal brand and his identity as a producer and host. So that's the kind of exchange of value that I'm talking about. And throughout my career, I've been doing those things strategically for the people I think are going to be crucial for my career. So um, it super it helps a lot if you are intentional with how you approach your relationships. And um, I'm not talking about intentionality in a way that all relationships have to have, some sort of benefit, right? Like I'm not talking about the transactional kind. I'm just talking about having a general compass, right? Like where do you want to go, and like just align all of your activities towards that. Because like to me, when I was in college, my idea of that was just being a design leader. Like that was the phrase in my head. Okay, my goal is to be a design leader. I don't know what that means, but like let's see, right? And so that phrase guided the types of activities that I attend or engage in, the type of people I meet, the type of side projects that I uh, put myself into. So it just helps. So it's much better that way. So to all the folks out there, young or old or like middle age or something. Yeah, I hope that helps.
That's great. Yeah, I think everything that you kind of do, or at least what I've been hearing in this episode, is that there's always a goal that you have in mind, and you utilize the community that you have. And if you don't have a community around that, just go build it. You go talk to people. You create lists of people you want to talk to, and then go from there incrementally, right? So it's really great to hear from someone like you how you've always used to utilize this power. Because to be honest, I don't think I'm the one person who has always used this to the max, right? I think there are times when I am lazy, or I would RSVP to a certain event and just decide to stay home because it's the easier path, right? Like food's right here. I have all the internet connection around in the world, right? I can do anything. I can watch
Totally,
any
totally.
video. Exactly.
Any
So
video, okay.
but yeah, so I think it's really great to hear that and get your insights on it, because it did kind of put a little bit more perspective of how I should approach network building. I think one of the biggest takeaways for me today is that each network or each connection that you create is not linear in terms of the value, but exponential, right? Every additional connection you make, you're able to draw more patterns within your own mind, refer other people, and that's the more value that you can add, right? You're no longer just one-to-one or a single person trying to connect everything together. You're within a network. And so I think that's the biggest takeaway for me.
Yeah, I can actually add that personally, for many years, I've been reluctant to the idea of networking. I thought about it as trying to sell something that is something that only salesperson should do. And that is not my game, right? And it took me time, and I've learned that only in later age how much important it is to build relationships, and how much can we also learn and share through these relationships. And without, being too philosophical, I think it's good to remember that we as human race has evolved and progressed largely because of our knowledge sharing. So communities play a big role in that too.
I'm so happy for you now. Like you didn't stop there, and like you're being intense about it now, and I love that for you, and I admire you for it. It's like I think um what's preventing most people is like having a fixed mindset, right? Like they can't change any longer, or like um they're, I guess, in a way close minded about things like that. But you've surpassed it yourself, and like you're doing it now, and like look at the value you're creating for a ton of people. So yeah, I'm so proud of you as my senpai. And the older between the two of us. Like, you are the older.
Well, first of all, thank you. And since, if you already complimented me, so maybe it's time for me to compliment you again, even though we talked about in the initial conversation, and to share with the audience how your work actually inspired the creation of this podcast. And because I remember seeing your first posting on LinkedIn, like I told you, on the first episodes of Roots, and how unconfident you were back then. Things weren't perfect. Still, you had the humility to go and put it out there. And following you through the years and seeing to where you come with that and how it's built is very inspiring. I also think that it's quite remarkable how you started with the challenges of having your own opportunities, and you use that as a drive and motivation to work hard to create opportunities for others in your own community.
Thanks, Dam. That's one of the best compliments I've gotten in years. So you're 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 amazing. And I appreciate it. And I also would like to say that I think when I was starting out, when looking at successful people, it may seem, super daunting or intimidating, or it can crush your confidence. But to be honest, all it takes is just like the first step. Like you can say that you're tired of hearing that, but it literally just starts with that. Like Googling how to start a podcast, or like how to find an amazing co-host like Yuki. Or like just floating the idea to your friends. Like it all starts with those small steps. And I think for anyone listening, yeah, figure out what your first small step is, and it will compound and boulder and magnify from there. So yeah.
Great. I think we can end with that. If you have plans to visit Thailand anytime, we should definitely have that shabu shabu.
Yes. Please.
But yeah, thank you so much for today.
You're welcome. And thank you so much for having me. I feel so appreciative and privileged to be here. Thanks, Yuki and Nam.
Thank you, Alexis.
And shout out to all the Agoda design folks who are still there, people who still know me. Love all of you guys. And I miss the ping pong table.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you are listening, and share it with your friends and colleagues. Don't forget to subscribe to our show to get notified when we are releasing a new episode. And if you want to learn more about the work of the design team at Agoda, visit agoda.design. Thanks again for listening, and hope to see you in our next episode.